Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our talk. We are here with Jamie. Please, Jamie, introduce yourself.
Hey, here everyone. My name is Jamie Lynch. I am head of AML at Gilbert and Tobin. I've been here 3 weeks, so I'm getting a handle on the Australian law sector. But I'm here to implement AML regime and how we do business and how we do AML in Australia.
First question. The AML regime will cover the law sector next year, but you started very early. Why you decided to do that, or what's the rationale for this?
I was lucky enough to be employed with the Department of Internal Affairs when I first arrived in New Zealand, and they were ramping up Tranche 2 in New Zealand at the time, and they were very much getting a handle on what the sectors would look like when supervised. Applying a financial piece of legislation to non-financial businesses was quite a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge over here as well. And it was really a sort of fact-finding mission for the first year as to how it could be rolled out, how it could be effectively supervised. And I was lucky enough to play a small part in designing how that structure looked and how supervision looked in practice. And we worked with the organisations of the sectors to see what good looked like, and then tried to supervise on that basis. And it's gradually evolved over the last decade or so. But it's been really interesting to see sectors take the lead on using AML as a tool to improve their business processes and create efficiencies and create value. And I saw a real good opportunity in Australia to do the same. There is a massive opportunity for Australia to revamp and reassess how they do business and how they engage with their customers. And I really want to be a part of it again. Having had the experience, I think I've got some good lessons to bring to the table.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What do you think law firms specifically should do to prepare themselves for Tranche 2?
I think there's a couple of ways of looking at it. I think there is an argument to be made that law firms have not had that interrupting inflection point that other businesses have had. I'm thinking about accountancies with Xero and challenging how they do business. Law firms have largely gone unchallenged for a number of years. There is absolutely opportunity to use AML as a lever to reevaluate how they do business generally, and that's what I would be doing. I would be looking at how I engage with clients, how I onboard my staff, how we engage with vendors, and how we engage with financial institutions. There is a root and branch approach you can take where you can wholesale look at every facet of the legal business. That said, you can also look at it from a very simple point of view of like, how well do we want to know our clients? How well do we want to know what we're doing for them? Do we do that well now, or do we need to change that? And this is an opportunity to do it. So to prepare for it, I would be conducting a risk assessment around where an exposure sits, where opportunities also sit, and then using that as a lever to drive where you're going to spend your money and how you're going to approach AML as a proposition. The beauty of the act is that it's proportionate and it's reasonable. And so you only have to do as much as it takes to defend your business and meet your obligations. You shouldn't be looking to go over the top and buy software and buy products before you understand what your risks are. So step one is to complete a risk assessment. And that can be as simple as looking at every external touch point of your business. Like look at your clients, look at your vendors, look at everything that is external to your business and what risks they present. And then use that as a template to what you're going to do next. As I said, it's a great opportunity to go to your board, to go to SLT members and bring a proposition which encompasses a lot of other things as well. So I'll be looking at allies internally in the business as well. I'll be looking at our HR team because they've got vetting, which is clearly in the AML auspices. I'll be looking at our vendor procurement teams, like people who are buying tech and buying solutions. I'll be looking at the lawyers who are dealing with corporate due diligence, who are looking at ESG issues, and seeing how we can bring CDD solutions to the table to help them as well. And getting as many allies as you can to create a value proposition to the board which goes over and above what AML is, and making clear the value add which you can bring to the table, not just a compliance impediment.
I always thought in relation to lawyers that they have kind of a leg up compared to other sectors because a lot of their knowledge and a lot of what they do will be an advantage for implementing anti-money laundering. Like lots of lawyers have a good understanding of corporate structures, for example. While if you go, I want to pick one to a real estate agent, for example, they might not have the same understanding and the same knowledge. Lawyers need to have a license, or at least they need to uh, provide a certain certification that helps with employee vetting. There's already a lot of things that lawyers do, right?
Exactly right, and that's exactly the point, Julia. They are largely doing what they would need to be doing for AML. I suspect in various different guises. They're probably already collecting personal information about their customers and clients. They're probably already putting together corporate structures. They're probably already assessing risks in terms of like transactional risk for their clients. So all those learnings definitely feed into creating a pretty efficient work stream already. And lawyers also have that communication with their clients, which is much more in depth than perhaps other sectors do as well. They have a direct line of communication with their clients, usually where they're talking to them. That's another thing they could be doing is communicating with the clients now and saying what's changing, what's happening, what's coming up, and working out a way which you can complete your obligations in the least invasive way possible. Starting those conversations early and understanding how best to engage with the clients on that basis. But you're right, the stuff they're doing now and the work they are completing at the moment definitely stands them in good stead.
Yeah, I think the final clients, there's going to be such a huge learning curve for clients. I talk with people and they say what I do, and nobody know what it is, and I always need to explain to them. And I always tell to everyone, give it 1 year, you will hear about this. Because I remember in New Zealand, there was much more awareness of what anti-money laundering compliance was, because everybody went to a real estate agent at some point, or went to an accountant, or went to someone that asked them for passports and explained to them, oh, this is for anti-money laundering, this is for blah, blah, blah.
I think you're right. And look, I think there's two things that are different now. I think like in the decade since New Zealand brought this legislation in, and Australia are now, people are much more comfortable in providing personal information for transactional activities. I think with a lot of Australian life, you have to provide some sort of identification to access services. People are more digitally literate. There is more access and understanding of how identity is shared online. So I think your customers and clients will be much more comfortable in doing so. And also lawyers, customers and clients have been doing AML regulation probably in most jurisdictions they operate in over the last decade as well. I certainly found in New Zealand that when we were engaging with clients, they were perfectly prepared to complete all CDD processes because they've done it in America, they've done it in the UK to operate in EU or wherever. And quite often they have a pack of AML stuff ready to go. The barrier I found in legal scenarios was internal. It was often like senior partners who were uncomfortable in asking for verification information, but once you've got past that and got to the customer or the client, they were perfectly happy to provide it. So it's really managing internal barriers than external barriers. I suspect is going to be the problem for people. But the other point you made around awareness and give it a year's time, absolutely true. And so if you can be the first cab off the rank in terms of communication, that will stand you in good stead, because I guarantee on July 1st, every single customer and every single client in Australia will be getting emails and phone calls and from all of their lawyers, accountants, real estate agents asking them for CDD information. And you don't want to be part of that crowd. You want to be ahead of it, and you want to be leading the pack and making it easy for them.
Absolutely, that's true. I think that sometimes lawyers, or at least a point that many lawyers bring up, it's around confidentiality and concerns around how lawyers can actually balance their confidentiality duties with anti-money laundering and their reporting to Austrac. What do you think about it? How firm should consider that?
So I think with confidentiality stuff, like obviously the AML CTF Act overrides confidential provisions if and where there is a clear evidence of criminal behaviour, and there is ethical obligations on solicitors and lawyers to report such things anyway. So I think they probably fall in line with that. There's an evolving conversation in New Zealand, and it will happen here, around privilege, around how that operates in practice. And I think the sort of halfway house compromise which has been arrived at in New Zealand is that financial information around your client isn't legally privileged, and that's the approach supervisors have taken in New Zealand. It's not been fully tested in court, it's not been fully assessed, but the sector's largely gone along with it on the basis that if it does need to be tested, they will. And I suspect that's where they'll land here as well. I think it's it's pretty reasonable to assume that trust account activity where there's flow of funds, clearly you've got reporting obligations there around PTRs anyway, so that stuff is not legally privileged. Perhaps the conversations around it might be, but I suspect any sort of SMR reporting will not breach that privilege. And I think if it does, there's conversations to be had. But I think Austrac have been quite open in the sense that they're engaging with the sector around it, and it's probably going to evolve in conversation to happen over the next year or so. But in terms of confidentiality, largely, I suspect, I think, yeah, I suspect customers and clients will only be as happy to provide information as you are at being open and engaging and clear about what you want and why you want it. So it's again about making sure your processes are absolutely efficient, streamlined, and suit you and the customer in terms of how and when you're asking information, how you're using it, and also how you're storing it. Like also, it's beyond confidentiality, but record keeping. Now it's time to look at it and see how you're storing personal information, because you don't want it in a Google Drive. So you need to be looking at that sort of stuff.
Yeah, also with growing concerns about um, hacking and bad actors collecting informations or hacking computers. And I think that's absolutely a growing concern, since everyone will start to store
Yeah.
more and more information.
Exactly right. And I think most legal practitioners will probably end up using some sort of VOI provider, and how they store their data and where they process their data is something I will be looking closely at. If the data is being stored in the cloud, how and where is it being stored? Where is the storage servers? Where do they operate? Is data being offshored? All those questions your client will quite rightly be asking you, and you need to be able to stand behind what you've chosen as a provider. So if your vendor is sending data offshore to be processed, then that's something you need to be comfortable with, and they need to be comfortable with too. And how and where it's stored is front of mind for everybody, as you just mentioned. So those sort of things you'd be looking at.
For the audience, VOA provider, what does it stand for?
I apologize. So electronic verification providers, so providers who will assess and verify the identity of your customers online using a mobile application or their computer.
Yeah. I think also that goes beyond probably the confidentiality part or the record keeping. As a business owner, I am thinking of insurance. So insuring oneself from cyber attack, which doesn't necessarily protect, but at least helps mitigating or at least dealing with the consequences of being attacked.
Absolutely right. And those conversations you'll be having with your insurer this year, because they're aware this is coming. They'll be looking at your cyber policy and if it is fit for purpose, because they recognize you're going to be holding a lot more personal information than perhaps you were 12 months ago. There is value to be had in having a really good, efficient AML CTF program, which speaks to how you keep records, how you choose vendors, all those things. Because when you're speaking to your insurers or insurance brokers, being able to demonstrate good practice and good filing hygiene is something which will stand in your favor in terms of premium payments as well.
Jamie, do you think that Tranche 2 will change how lawyers deal with their clients or deal with their matters, or it will change who they choose to work with and what work they choose to take?
Absolutely. I think it absolutely will. I think there is absolutely appetite in the legal sector to evaluate their clients on a deeper level and understand where their risks sit. And as I alluded to earlier, when you are completing client due diligence to its fullest extent and understanding who your client is to the best of your ability, and you're also understanding what you're doing for them and why, you get a better understanding of where the risk sits there, and then whether that fits with your risk appetite and profile. And that goes beyond money laundering, terrorism financing, which is very important. But you start thinking about ESG risk, you start thinking about reputational risk, you start thinking about all these wider issues which are affecting your firm and how you are presented in the media or in adverse findings. Those sort of conversations will be happening at board level, and that will absolutely inform who you choose to work with and who you choose to engage with. Once you've built up a profile of a client and you've got a consistent understanding of the nature and purpose of the relationship which you have with them, you get a better understanding of what's different and what's weird as well, and that gives you comfort, and it gives your client comfort that you are your compliance work is benefiting them as well. Because you spoke about earlier about bad actors and hacking and theft of identity. This AML CTF process and this client due diligence process allows you to better understand your clients and their nuance, and when and if your clients are subject to malicious actors impersonating them or trying to access your services purporting to be them, this sort of work will hopefully allow you to capture that as well. So I think it will change who you work with and how you work with them. And I think those law firms and those lawyers who choose not to engage with the regulations and choose not to meet their obligations, they're going to be pushed to the margins, because increasingly they're going to be working with the clients who you have chosen not to work with, and that leaves them open to regulatory and legal action, because it'll be increasingly obvious those lawyers who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, because that's where those clients will be going. And so it should clean your books just by virtue of people not wanting to complete the process you've put in place. So you'll have more choice, you'll have greater visibility, but you will also be separating the wheat from the chaff in terms of clients who see you as too hard basket and probably won't approach you.
Thank you. Do you have any closing remark or anything you want to add?
I don't. I just want to reinforce. I think this is a real opportunity for you as a business, and I think if you look at it like that and you create value propositions through this process, there is a real opportunity for you to revolutionize how the law firm operates in practice from start to finish. You can use AML as a driver for every single point of the life cycle of a client through your business, and provide opportunities to improve how you engage with clients and how clients experience your law firm. The firms that do that are the firms that are going to see competitive advantage and competitive success on the basis of AML CTF, and the firms that don't, and the firms that implement really clunky add-on, bolt-on solutions which don't necessarily speak to client experience or client value or actually deliver anything other than basic CED process, are going to find that clients are reacting in the way that they might go somewhere else where it's more streamlined and efficient. So it's a real opportunity, but it's also it's got a real potential to separate legal services into the good and the less good. So now it's time to start thinking about how you can be in the form.
Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks, Julia. Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.